Good morning, project number 2. So this is another little box. I'm using sewing related type fabric, a nice fabric print. In the inside you have lots of little pockets, all different sizes, most of them with gussets, some without, but it just gives you space to put bits and bobs in. So I started off creating my circle. I used a hoop, an embroidery hoop, as my template. If you don't have an embroidery hoop, this is 10 inches, this one. You can use perhaps a large dinner plate, compass if you really have to, anything to get a nice circle. So obviously for my outside fabric, I'm going to need a circle for the bottom, which is this one, and I'm going to use this nice cloud print. So that's going to be the base. I also need to have something to go around the sides, and that's going to be this fabric. So I've cut that 5 inches wide. Let me just check. Yep, that's 5 inches wide. Lengthwise it needs to be about 32 inches, there or thereabouts. I would probably, this is actually the full width of the fabric, and I've just cut it the full width, and I'll cut it to fit when I stitch it together. You will also need a lining. So you can see here the spotty on this side, so that's going to be the lining. And then my pockets are made up of 2 bits of fabric. You can see here you've got the scissors or the pattern on one side, and you've got the spotty on the inside. And the new one I'm going to make up is going to have this on the outside and this on the inside. Notice that one is 4 inches and one is 4.5. Okay, and again I've just cut it the whole width of the fabric. You need to allow for your gussets, so you need to allow more than just round your hoop. When you sew this together and put your raw edges together, you will find that your lining will come round the front just a little way like that. So that's why they're different sizes. I will also need a lining for the bottom. So this is, I've drawn the circle, my 10-inch circle, but you notice I've cut it about an inch and a half bigger, because I'm going to have a circle of card, and this is a bit of fabric that will cover the card. So that's all my pieces of fabric. I have got, for the stiffener around the outside, I've got some of this Bosal foam. Okay, so you need about 32 inches of that. Again, we'll cut it down once we get it together. And on the base I've put a couple of layers of quilting fabric. You can use wadding, you can use anything that you have to hand, basically, just to give it a wee bit of softness. You notice too I've just done a few lines of quilting on it, just to give it a wee bit more sort of body, and it will keep it all together as well. So the first thing we're going to do is take this piece. I've already quilted that, so that's ready to go. I'm now going to put my outside fabric, which is this one. So let's leave all these inner pieces to the side. So I'm going to take my outside fabric and I'm going to lay this on top. And you notice I've cut it a little bit smaller. You can quilt that all the way around if you like. If you don't want to have quilting on the outside, if you do as I did here and actually cut this including seam allowances, so this was cut 5 inches for this one, but for this one I've cut it 4 inches because I'm just going to do a couple of lines of quilting on here. So as if by magic, we now have this quilted on to my stiffener. Next thing I'm going to do is attach the base to the side, so the base here and this outside. So make sure if you've got a pattern that you keep it the right way up. Clouds with little faces need to be kept the right way up. So right side to right side, and you can clip. Now when you come to sew that, you're going to sew it from this side. You want the flat on the bed of your machine. So you can either clip or use pins. and as you go it just works its way around. Now notice I haven't joined the ends of these because I don't want to yet. So I've now pinned and or clipped all the way around. So I've got clips there and I've got pins here. And now I come to the end of my strips. So this one I've got the end of the foam there. So I'm going to just fold that back out the way. And you can see my quilting lines are still there. They'll come off with the iron. Then I'm going to, making sure that's still lined up, fold that bit back. And eventually I want it to look like that. So I will put a pin in there, and that is going to be my seam line. Okay. Let's transfer that pin to the inside. So that's going to be my seam line. So I'm going to take the foam and I'm going to cut just the foam, which means I have to undo some of this quilting. So I'm going to cut just the foam off there, and then I'm going to put my two right sides of just the fabric together and stitch my fabric. So now I've cut the one end off, so you can see I've still got my seam allowance on my fabric, but when I put the two seam allowances together, my foam should butt together. Okay, so I'm going to take that to sew at the machine. I'll undo a few pins just to make it easier. So I'll take a couple of pins out that way and a couple this way. Put these two bits together, making sure they'll line up. Just like that. And I'm going to stitch down there. Once I've done that, I'll then position it back onto here, and I'll go to the machine and I'm going to sew with the base sitting on the machine and stitch all the way around that. So that's me stitched all the way around, and I've turned it out the right way. So we can now leave that to the side for 1 minute. I did take my inside and measure it all the way around, and because remember when we cut this I just cut the whole width of the fabric. So now I need to, there's my pin where I need to cut. So if I line my ruler up, obviously you need to have straight cuts every time you do anything. It needs to be a straight cut. So you can see here I've got the edge of the 1 inch, it is in fact, on the bottom of the fabric. I'm then going to take my, I don't need to take my marker pen because I can just take my cutter. So let's line it up properly. Take that pin out. Obviously you cannot go through your pin with your cutter, it doesn't work. And that hasn't worked either because I'm at a strange angle. There we go. Right, I've got the camera cradled in my arms almost, which makes it slightly difficult. So I can discard a piece of fabric. The other thing that I've done is I've taken my pocket pieces. So you see here the pocket bits here. So remember they were 2 bits of fabric, and I've stitched right side to right side, and I've stitched all the way down. I've then pressed it. So when I now fold this and put my selvage here, not selvage, sorry, the raw edge to the raw edge, and notice I've left this open, that's the way I want it just now. You have just a teeny weeniest bit of green coming through the top. So it's worth giving this a press, which I'll do next, and then we're going to fit it onto this piece here. Right, so I have pressed that, and in fact I've stitched along the bottom edge just to hold it now as one piece. I've found the middle, and on my inside pocket piece I've found the middle. I've actually made a wee notch there, so all you need to do is fold that in half and then use your scissors just to cut the smallest notch out, and then that's the middle. Okay, so let's because we can only see one bit at a time. So I'm going to line my bottom edge of this onto the bottom edge of there, and likewise the edge of this that I've trimmed up onto the edge of there. So that is going to be in a seam allowance eventually, but I'm just going to pin that together like that. So I'm not going to do it on a regular pocket. I like irregular pockets. If you want it regular, then we need to be a bit more accurate in our measurements. I am just going to do pockets of different sizes because I think that's possibly better. So that's the middle there, so I'm just going to put that pin in. Just means that I've got roughly the same amount of pockets on both sides. So to make a pocket, you're just going to fold a gusset like that. So you have it like that, you come back, and if you want to be really accurate, put your ruler there. So let's say I want to come back 1/2 inch like that. Pin that. Then make the size of the pocket you want. So let's say we want the pocket to finish there. I'm going to come back 1/2 inch like that and give that a crease and then flick it over. Again, make sure you keep everything nice and straight as you're doing it. And I would pin that there. And I'd pin it up on the top there. Then to make the next pocket, let's keep this one the same. So let's do a 1/2 inch. So you can see my 1/2 inch line there on this fold here, previous fold I've done. You don't have to be 100% accurate on this, but it's nice if you're going to have them the same, have them the same. Fold it like back and then to the right and then to the left. Take your ruler away and that should just fit in there. Like that, so that I'll put a pin in there and a pin in at the top. Right, so I'm going to make the next pocket a lot bigger. So that one was 3 1/4 inches. No, I think we'll go smaller. I think we'll do a 2 inch one. So from the fold, make the gusset part. So come back to the 1/2 inch mark on the ruler, which is there. Give that a crease. Get the ruler away and flick it over. So on the little boxes I've put the pockets on the inside, but actually there's no reason why you don't have the pockets around the outside of the bag. And in fact, if you have the pockets on the outside, it then gives you the storage in the middle for bigger items, and then maybe they're easier to hand. It's entirely up to you. So obviously if you're going to put the pockets on the outside, you would have pinned them on to this bit before you actually stitched it on. You'd have made your pockets around there. But let's keep going the way we're going. So that's 2 little pockets done. Now I'm going to do just a flat piece. So I'm just going to come across here. So that will just be a pocket without a gusset. Pin top and bottom. And then pin in the 1/2 inch, hold it back to the 1/2 inch. Something looks slightly squint there, and that's better. And then that takes me to the middle, so I haven't quite left enough there, so I'm just going to move that down. It'll be fine. This is going to be a really big pocket. Don't make your pockets too big. You'll find that they'll open too far into the middle and they're not so good. So that's my next one. So the next job, once I've got to the end, is to give that a press. Now you notice when I've put the pins in, I put the pins in along the bottom and I've put the pins in the top, so I can take my iron and very carefully go along like that. Once you've done that, you're then going to draw the lines where you're going to stitch. So this will now be creased. I'll put a pin in there to hold it in place. And you're going to put a line down there, and that will be for stitching. And you'll do the same there, a line down there for stitching, and undo these because you're going to stitch them and then sort of place the gussets back. So we'll come to that in a second. Right, so that's us all stitched. So you can see I've stitched down the lines that I've marked, and then these are going to get folded back like that to make the gussets. So I've stitched all of them. I've also stitched at the end just to hold it in place, both ends. Then I'm going to fold over and there, and I'm going to stitch all the way along the bottom, making sure that I make all the pockets. So these ones have got gussets, there's 2 flat ones, then there's another 2 gussets. That's a big pocket, and then as we go along, so stitch all the way along the bottom. Right, so I've stitched all the way along the bottom. I've then put my 2 ends together, and I've stitched down there as well. Now I've done that because I know that this is going to fit on there perfectly. So the next thing we're going to do is put the right side to right side on our basket, and I'm going to stitch it round the top there. To make it slightly, if you're nervous about it not fitting, then you can find the halfway mark which you've marked. Remember we marked that with a little notch? And then if you find the quarter mark, and again you can mark that, and then find a quarter, half and then quarter here, and then make each quarter fit, and then you know it will fit. So we'll come back in a second. So there we are, I've pinned it all the way around the top. I've put the lining into the inside. Just make sure that when you're pinning it that you put the top to the top, and when you turn it all out, the pockets will be the right way up. I'm sure you won't do that. So pinned all the way around, so I now can take that to the machine. I will take the arm off the machine, and then I can go around nice and easily. I find sometimes if you're doing something like this that pins are actually easier than clips, but if you're happy with clips, that's fine. So stitch all the way. Right, so that has now been stitched round the top, and the next thing you're going to do is bring it into the middle like that. Okay, you are going to take this and give it a press, because I don't want to see any lining on the outside, so you'll just roll it round and press, and then once you've given it a really good press, you're then going to top stitch all the way around. That's the next job. So there we are, all stitched round the top, and in fact that's how it would look if you had the pockets on the outside. So the next thing we're going to do, assuming that we're putting the pockets on the inside, and this might seem slightly unusual but it's worth doing, is, so I've got this upside down, I'm going to pull this bit and bring it down so that it hits my circle. Do you remember that circle that we have in the bottom? And I'm going to pin that on. Now what that does is it means that the pockets are nice and taut when you fill them. They stay down and don't ride up. So it's slightly fiddly to do. Make sure you get it nice and straight, and then put your pins in. Remember too, when you're sewing, keep the circle in the bottom. Again, just check it's nice and straight. All things being equal, your selvage edges, your raw edges should match up. Just like that. As I say, when you come to sew, you're going to have it on your machine like that, and you're going to sew round like that. Okay, nearly done. Right, so that's us stitched all the way around the base. Remember, we're stitching it that way, so when you're on the machine it doesn't feel quite right because you're having to squish these bits down, but that's correct because you want this on the base of the machine. Once you're happy with that, turn it out. There we go. Not quite finished yet. One final bit. Remember that other big circle that you had? Actually, before we turn it out, I want to show you this. So if you had put these pockets on the outside, this is the sort of look you would have. So you'd have straight pockets, you'd have big pockets, whatever way you wanted it. That's a big straight one. But I'm going to turn them and put them in the inside. So, remember the big circle of fabric that we had? Big circle of fabric, put piece of card. The card was cut 9.5 inches, although I cut the fabric 10, so it's going to be a really neat fit. I hope it is going to fit. I've done a running stitch all the way around. I've pulled it all up, and I'll finish that off, but just to show you what happens, that's going to go in here, and it will be tight. I want it to be tight. That's a gathering thread, but we'll sort that later. Now, if you want this to be softer, before you put the fabric on and pull it up, if you put a piece of wadding on there, and if you want it to be domed, then put a smaller circle of wadding and then a full circle of wadding and then your fabric, and then pull it up. So that's us. Just make sure that it's nice and neat on the bottom. You've pushed it down as far as you can. And there's all your different pockets. Now notice that even the straight pockets, let's find a straight pocket, there's a straight pocket, so I haven't allowed any gusset there, but because it's on a curve, it opens out for you. And the gusseted pockets obviously open a lot further. And as I say, I think I said at the beginning, don't make your pockets too big. I think that one's possibly on the big side. The other thing, of course, you can do is, if you want, is put poppers on to hold the poppers closed. Remember, you need to do that. Sorry, just fiddling here. You need to put the poppers on. You can't do them now. You need to do them before you sort of stitch bits together. So there we are. So there is that one. Nice, bright and jolly. And there was our other one. Same idea. Happy sewing!